You've arrived just as the first stars are beginning to peek through the twilight, and not a moment too soon. The air has taken on that sharp, cider-crisp edge that tells us the sun has done its heavy lifting for the year. Can you smell that? It's the scent of damp earth, wood smoke, and the fallen leaves gathering in the hollows of the lane. Come along now. Let's get you up the path and toward the light. The mist is already starting to curl around the base of the pumpkins. It's been a long, busy stretch of weeks, hasn't it? My bones are feeling the weight of the harvest, but it's a good sort of ache, the kind that makes the thought of a warm hearth feel like a prize you've truly earned. We've just managed to get the last of the grain into the barn before the clouds broke yesterday, and the orchard is finally stripped bare, save for a few stubborn fruits left for the birds at the very tops of the branches. You can see the farmhouse glowing there ahead of us, nestled into the hillside as if it's trying to tuck itself in for the night. I always think the stone looks its best at this hour, soaking up the amber light from the windows. Watch your step on these stones. The frost hasn't quite taken hold yet, but the moss is plenty slick with the evening dew. I've kept the fire in the small brazier going by the bench here, just to guide the way. There's a mug of something warm waiting for you inside, though I suppose we should take a moment to just look back at the valley while the blue is still in the sky. It's so quiet out here now that the cicadas have finished their song. Just the crackle of the wood and the distant sound of the stream down by the old bridge. We have a bit of a task ahead of us tonight, if you're up for it, though nothing that requires any great haste. The cellar is currently a bit of a tumble. Jars waiting for labels, apples that need a gentle hand to sort them into their winter beds, and bundles of sage and rosemary that need hanging from the rafters before the moisture of the night gets to them. It's the best kind of work, really. No pressure, no deadlines, just the rhythmic satisfaction of putting things where they belong. There's something deeply settling about seeing the year's labor gathered in, safe and dry behind thick stone walls. I found myself lingering in the upper orchard earlier today, just watching the way the light hit the turning maples. It reminded me of a year, a long time ago now, when the harvest came so late we were picking by lantern light for 3 nights running. We were exhausted, but we laughed the whole time, our hands stained with juice and the smell of bruised fruit filling the cold air. Tonight feels a bit like that, the same sense of shared presence, of being right where we ought to be. Let's head toward the porch. I've left the lantern on the post lit for us. You can see the pumpkins we gathered this morning. They look almost like fallen moons scattered across the grass. We'll leave the heavy boots by the door and transition into the warmth. I've already moved the heaviest bins down into the cool dark, but there are still the finer things to attend to, the herbs and the specialized preserves that need a bit more care. It's a peaceful way to end the day, isn't it? Just you, me, and the slow heartbeat of the farm settling down for the winter sleep that's coming soon. Watch your step as you cross the threshold, friend. I've just propped open the cellar hatch and wouldn't want you taking an unplanned trip down to the larder before we've had our tea. It's good to have you in out of that creeping mist. The kitchen always feels a bit like the true heart of the farm during harvest, doesn't it? Between the stone walls and these low, heavy beams, there's a sense that the house itself is bracing for the cold, pulling all its treasures inward to keep them safe from the frost. You've arrived at the height of the beautiful chaos. Everywhere you look, there's something that grew under the summer sun, now waiting for its winter home. Those baskets of apples by the hearth are still holding on to a bit of the afternoon's warmth, scenting the whole room with that sweet, slightly sharp perfume that only happens in October. I've been moving the heavier pumpkins into the corners, but as you can see, the floor is still a bit of an obstacle course of carrots, onions, and deep green squashes. It's a wonderful kind of mess, though. The sort of clutter that tells you the cupboards will be full when the snow eventually finds us. I've kept the fire high in the grate. That kettle has been humming a steady tune all evening, and it's about ready to be poured. There's a particular comfort in the way the amber light reflects off the copper pans and the jars lining the shelves. Even the shadows in the rafters seem softer tonight, dancing between the braids of garlic and the dried herbs I've already managed to string up. I find myself pausing every few minutes just to take it all in, the sheer abundance of it. It's easy to forget the long, sweaty afternoons of weeding and watering when you're standing here, surrounded by the physical proof of the earth's generosity. I recall a story my grandfather used to tell about a harvest moon so bright you could read a letter by it in the middle of the field. He said the whole village stayed out until dawn, not because they had to, but because the air felt so charged with magic that nobody wanted to go inside and miss a second of it. They danced right there between the rows of corn, their shadows stretching out like giants. I think about that whenever the cellar hatch is open and the house is full of food. We aren't just storing calories, we're storing the memory of the sun and the shared effort of the seasons. It's a heavy responsibility, keeping these things well, but a joyful one. Look at the way the starlight is framed in that open door behind you. It looks like a painting, but the cold draft at your ankles reminds us that the season is turning. That's why we have the cellar, built deep into the cool, quiet hillside. It's a place where time slows down, where the frantic energy of the growing season is allowed to rest and transform. We'll be taking these baskets down one by one, very gently. No need to rush. The night is young, and the work is a pleasure when shared. The wood in the stove is just starting to settle into that deep, rhythmic pop and crackle that accompanies the best conversations. I've set out the wooden bowls and the twine on the workbench there. We'll start with the most delicate things first, the herbs that need the still air, and the jars that need their final labels before they're tucked away in the dark. It's the finishing touches that make the harvest feel complete, that transition from a pile of produce to a proper winter pantry. Take a moment to breathe it all in, the earth, the spice, the wood smoke, before we begin our descent into the quiet below. Lowering ourselves down to the hearthstone level makes the world feel a bit smaller and more manageable, I find. There's a certain gravity to these baskets, a heavy, sun-ripened weight that anchors us right here in this corner of the kitchen. Feel the skin of this one here. It's still cool from the orchard air, but you can sense the sweetness locked inside. Sorting the apples is a job that can't be rushed, because each fruit has its own story and its own destiny for the winter months ahead. We have to be gentle. If you bruise a keeper, it won't be long before the whole bin starts to turn. And we've worked too hard to let that happen now. I'm putting the firmest, clearest ones into this wooden crate on the left. These are the russets and the northern spies, the ones with the thick skins that can handle a bit of a chill. They'll sit in the deepest part of the cellar, tucked away in the dark, and by February, they'll be the crispest, tartest treat you've ever tasted when the world outside is nothing but grey and white. It's a bit of magic, really, how a piece of October can wait for you all the way until the first thaws of spring. You develop a bit of an eye for it after a few years, the way the light catches a slight indentation or a tiny puncture from a bird's beak. Those go into the green bowl for immediate use. The ones in the bowl won't see the cellar floor. They're destined for the copper pot or the pie crust. A little bruise doesn't mean the apple is lost. It just means it's impatient. It wants to be cider, or perhaps sliced thin and dried by the fire until it's chewy and sweet, like candy. I like the variety of colours we have this year. The deep, winey reds sitting right next to those speckled golds. It looks like a pile of jewels caught in the lantern light, doesn't it? I've always found that the smaller, uglier apples often have the most concentrated flavour, as if they had to work harder to grow and packed all that effort into a smaller space. The rhythmic thunk of the fruit hitting the wood is a peaceful sound, a heartbeat for the evening. I've left the scraps of parchment on the table there so we can keep track of which bin is which. There's no frustration quite like looking for a baking apple in the dark of January and coming up with a dessert pear instead. You can see the candle flickering in the window behind the baskets, a little beacon against the starlight. It's a quiet time, a meditative time. Your hands get a little sticky with the juice, and the smell of the orchard starts to mix with the lavender drying in the basket nearby. I remember a season when the frost came so early the apples froze right on the trees, turning into crystal spheres that shattered if you touched them. We thought we'd lost the lot, but we gathered them anyway, melting them down into the most incredible, thick syrup you've ever had. It taught me that even a spoiled harvest has its own kind of bounty if you're patient enough to find it. That's the way of our folk, I suppose, looking for the comfort in the unexpected and making sure nothing good goes to waste. Take this one in your hand and feel the heft of it. It's solid, reliable, and full of the summer's rain and the autumn's wind. We'll just keep on like this for a bit, one apple at a time, until the baskets are empty and the crates are full. There's no need to think about tomorrow or the chores that wait in the barn. Right now, there is only the warmth of the fire at our backs, the scent of the harvest in our noses, and the simple, tactile joy of sorting the year's gifts into their proper places. Stepping carefully down these stone stairs, we leave the crackle of the kitchen fire for the cool, grounding scent of the earth itself. There is a stillness down here that you won't find anywhere else on the farm. A kind of deep, patient quiet that only comes when you build right into the bones of the hill. Can you feel how the air changes? It's heavy and damp, but in a way that feels clean, like the breath of the fields after a long rain. This is where the year truly goes to sleep, tucked away behind these thick stone walls where the frost can't reach, and the sun can't wither the bounty we've worked so hard to gather. I'll set the lantern right here on the heavy oak table, so we can see what we're doing. Look at the way the light catches the curves of the pumpkins and the dusty glass of the jars on the shelves. It's a bit like a treasure chamber, isn't it? Though our gold is found in the deep orange of the squash and the rich, dark purple of the pickled beets. This cellar has seen many a harvest, and every stone seems to hold a bit of that history. You can see the old timber beams above us, dark with age and holding up the weight of the kitchen and all our footsteps above. They've stood firm through countless winters, and they'll stand through this one too. We've already managed to get a good start on the shelving. Those rows of jars back there represent weeks of peeling, bubbling pots, and the sharp scent of vinegar filling the house. There's something so deeply satisfying about seeing them all lined up, shoulder to shoulder. It's the visual record of the summer. The berries we picked when the heat was almost too much to bear, and the beans that grew so fast we could hardly keep up with the picking. Down here, in the amber glow of the lantern and the flickering torch on the wall, it all feels quietly complete. You can see the barrels tucked into the alcove over there, resting on their sides. They're full of last year's cider, slowly turning into something rich and complex, while we wait for the new pressings to join them. There's a tiny drip from the ceiling into that puddle on the floor. It's just the hill sharing a bit of its moisture with us. It's a rhythmic, steady sound. Drip, drop, drip. Like a slow clock that doesn't care about minutes or hours, only the slow turning of the seasons. I find that sound more relaxing than any music I've ever heard. It reminds me that the world is alive, even when it's resting. I've gathered a few more things on the table that need our attention. A few more onions to be braided, a handful of lavender that was a bit too damp to stay upstairs, and those pumpkins that still have a bit of garden soil clinging to their ribs. We'll take our time with them. There's no wind down here to chill us, and no hurry to be anywhere else. We are in the safe harbor now, the place where the work of the hands meets the peace of the heart. It's funny how the perspective shifts when you're beneath the ground. All those little worries about the leaky roof or the fence that needs mending seem to fade away. What matters is the grain in the sacks, the roots in the bins, and the company of a good friend while the moon climbs high outside that small, square window. You can see it there, a bright silver coin hanging in the blue-black sky, watching over the orchards and the empty fields. It's a beautiful night to be finishing the work, a night that feels as if the whole world is taking a long, slow exhale after a busy year. Let's move some of these sacks to make a bit of room. They're heavy with flour and oats, the very foundation of our winter breads. The texture of the burlap is rough under the fingers, a sturdy reminder of the labor that went into every grain. Once we've cleared a bit of space, we can bring those crates of sorted apples down and find them a proper spot. It's a bit like a puzzle, finding the right home for everything so the air can still circulate and the scents don't mingle too much. But we've got plenty of light and all the time we need. The heavy scent of the orchard is even more concentrated down here, trapped between the stone and the timber as we tuck these red pearmains into their winter beds. I've always found that a layer of clean, dry straw acts like a soft blanket for the fruit, keeping them from touching one another and preventing any little bruise from spreading its trouble to the neighbors. Can you feel the texture of this straw? It's brittle and smells of the late August sun, providing just enough cushion to keep the skins intact while allowing the cool cellar air to breathe around each apple. We'll nestle them in gently, stem end up, as if they're still waiting on the branch for a morning that's already passed. The cellar is doing its work well tonight. You can feel that steady, earthy chill pressing against the lantern's glow. It's a specialized kind of cold, not the biting wind that's currently rattling the bare branches outside, but a deep, underground hush that tells the produce it's time to be still. By burying them in the straw like this, we're tricking them into a long, slow sleep. In the dark, their ripening slows to a crawl, preserving that summer crunch for a snowy afternoon in January when we'll really need it. I've left your mug on the stool there. Mind the steam, it's still quite hot, while we work our way through this first crate. It's a rhythmic business, picking up a fruit, checking it one last time in the lantern light, and finding it a snug pocket in the golden stalks. You see how the light reflects off the skins. Some are matte and waxy, others are as shiny as polished copper. Each one is a little capsule of the year's weather, the heavy rains of June, the heat waves of July, and the cooling dews of September. We're effectively cataloguing the seasons here in these wooden bins. I've always preferred this part of the job to the actual picking. There's no ladder to wobble under your feet and no wasps to dodge. Just the quiet satisfaction of a task nearly finished. I remember a neighbour of mine, old Master Bramble, who used to swear that the apples kept better if you hummed a low tune while you packed them. He'd spend hours down in his cellar, a little lantern just like this one flickering away, vibrating a soft, chesty note that he claimed mimicked the hum of the bees. We all thought he was a bit eccentric, of course, but come midwinter, his apples were always the firmest and sweetest in the whole valley. Perhaps there's something to the idea of sharing a bit of our own warmth with the food that's going to sustain us through the dark months. It makes the work feel less like a chore and more like a conversation. The sacks of grain behind us are already settled, and the potatoes are bedded down in their own dark corner in those burlap bags. It's a good feeling, isn't it? Knowing that no matter how hard the frost bites, or how high the snow drifts against the kitchen door, we have everything we need right here beneath our feet. The cellar isn't just a room, it's a promise. It's our folks' way of saying that we've planned ahead, we've respected the land, and now we can afford to rest a little. The lantern light makes the shadows of the hanging herbs dance on the far wall, a reminder that we still have the aromatic work of the garden to attend to once the bins are full. Let's reach for that next basket. It's a bit heavier, full of the cookers that will eventually become the filling for our holiday pies. The straw is a bit thicker here to support their weight. It's a peaceful, repetitive motion, reach, check, tuck, that clears the mind better than anything else I know. You can hear the silence of the hillside all around us, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of the straw or the soft clink of the knife on the table as I trim a stubborn stem. We're creating our own little world down here, one where the only clock that matters is the one that measures the slow cooling of the earth. These bundles of thyme and sage are much lighter than the apple crates, though they carry a sharp, head-clearing scent that fills this corner of the cellar with a completely different energy. I've always found that the transition from the heavy, sweet earthiness of the root bins to the crisp, resinous perfume of the herbs is one of the most refreshing parts of the evening. Can you see how the lantern light plays off the silver-green leaves of the sage on the table? It's a wonderful contrast to the deep shadows in the rafters, where the previous bunches are already starting to darken and dry in the still, cool air. We'll need to work with a bit of a steady hand here. The twine needs to be tight enough to hold as the stems shrink, but gentle enough not to bruise the delicate oils that we've spent all summer cultivating. The air in this section of the cellar feels a bit thinner, sharpened by the rosemary and the lingering sweetness of the dried lavender hanging above us. It's a sensory map of the garden, really. Every bunch we tie up and hang is a little piece of the sunny hillside brought down into the quiet stone depths. I've always liked the way the rafters look once they're fully laden, a forest of upside-down trees, all swaying ever so slightly when the draft from the stairs catches them. It creates a sort of aromatic canopy that makes the cellar feel less like a storage room and more like a sanctuary. I've set the scissors and the extra spools of twine right here by your elbow so we can keep a rhythmic pace. Taking a moment to strip the lower leaves off these rosemary stems is a task for the senses. The oil stays on your fingers for hours, a persistent reminder of the garden's resilience. You can see the bundles already hanging in neat rows, casting long, spindly shadows against the stone walls. It's important to give each one enough space so the air can move freely between them. If they're too crowded, they'll lose that bright colour and turn a dusty, sad grey. And we want them to stay as vibrant as the day they were cut. There's a certain pride in looking up and seeing a full year's worth of seasoning ready for the winter stews and the holiday roasts. I find that working with herbs requires a different kind of focus than sorting apples. It's more about the small details, the way the twine loops around the stalks, and the sound of the scissors snipping through the hemp. It's a quiet, domestic music that fits the safe harbour we've built down here. The fireplace in the corner is throwing off a soft orange glow that keeps the chill at bay while we work at the table. It's not a roaring fire like the one upstairs, just a steady companion to keep the dampness from settling into the wood. Everything in this room has a purpose, from the jars of dried petals on the shelves to the heavy stone floor that keeps our temperature so perfectly even. There's a small jar of dried rose hips on the shelf behind you that I gathered after the first light frost. They're hard as little pebbles now, but they'll make a tea that tastes like a midsummer afternoon once the snow is deep against the windows. That's the way of our folk, I suppose, always thinking a few months ahead, making sure that the comforts of today are preserved for the needs of tomorrow. It's a way of living that honours the cycle of the earth, acknowledging that while the time of growing has finished, the time of enjoying is just beginning. The blue-black sky in the doorway shows the stars are only getting brighter as the night deepens. Let's reach for that last armful of marjoram. It's a bit more tangled than the rest, so it will take a bit of patience to sort through. The scent is faint but sweet, a quiet end to our herbal chores for the night. Once these are hung, the rafters will be as full as they've ever been, and we can finally turn our attention to the inventory book. It's a good feeling, seeing the workspace clear and the ceiling decorated with the bounty of the fields. We're nearly there now, just a few more knots to tie and a few more loops to hang before we can settle in with the candle and the ledger. The final knot is pulled tight on the last bunch of marjoram, and we can finally pull up a stool to this little corner table. The candle flame is steady here in the lee of the stone wall, casting a soft golden pool over the pages of my inventory book. It's a humble ledger, bound in worn leather and filled with the history of many seasons. But tonight, its empty columns feel like a promise waiting to be kept. Can you see the way the light catches the glass of these jars? They look like captured bits of the summer sun, the ruby of the cherries, the amber of the peaches, and the translucent green of the pears. This is the part of the evening where we take stock, not just of the pantry, but of the peace we've cultivated. I'll dip the pen and start with the top shelf. We have 12 jars of the spiced plums, enough to see us through the January nights when the orchard is nothing but bare branches. There's a certain weight to the pen as I mark the number down. It's a physical manifestation of all those hours spent by the stove, stirring the copper pot until the fruit turned thick and glossy. To the left, there are the pickled cucumbers, packed tight with dill and garlic. They provide that bright crunch that reminds the palate that spring is never truly gone, only sleeping. It's wonderfully quiet down here now, isn't it? The only sounds are the soft scratch of the nib and the occasional sigh of the candle. Out the window, the moon has climbed higher, casting silver shadows across the orchard floor. It looks cold out there, but in here, surrounded by the bulk of our stored food, we are safe. Every jar is a small victory against the winter. I've left your tea right there. It's cooled to just the right temperature for sipping while we work. There's a small chest in the corner of the table, carved from old oak, where I keep the more delicate things, the saffron threads and the precious pods of vanilla. They are the finer things that make a rustic life feel rich. I like to think that by writing these totals down, we're giving ourselves permission to stop worrying about the future. The math is simple and the results are comforting. We have enough. We've sorted the keepers, hung the herbs to dry, and now the ledger confirms what our hearts already knew. I find that this ritual of inventory is as much for the soul as it is for the stomach. It prevents that buzzing of the mind that can happen when the days get shorter. Instead of a frantic list of what still needs to be done, we have a calm record of what has been accomplished. The jars on the shelves behind the table are standing in neat rows, like soldiers ready to defend the house against the frost. There's the marrow jam, the honeyed walnuts, and the jars of wild mushrooms we found back in September. We're nearly at the end of the page now. Just the root cellar totals to add, the sacks of potatoes and the bins of carrots bedded down in their sand. The ink is drying slowly in the cool air, leaving behind a permanent trail of our efforts. I'll just leave the book open for a moment so the last entry doesn't smudge. It's a good feeling, seeing the year's work gathered in and accounted for. There's nothing left to do but blow out the candle and carry the lantern back up to the kitchen. The cellar is full, the year is complete, and the night is ours to enjoy. Let's gather our things. The tea is finished, the labels are checked, and the door to the stairs is waiting. We'll leave the shadows to watch over the preserves, knowing they're safe in the cool embrace of the hill. There's one last look to be had at the orchard through the small window. The frost is starting to sparkle on the grass now, but it can't reach us here. We've done well today, friend. We've truly done well. Finding our way back up the stairs feels like rising through the very layers of the year, each step bringing us closer to the living warmth of the house above. The kitchen door swings shut behind us with a solid, familiar thud, sealing the cool breath of the hillside away and leaving us in the golden embrace of the hearth. It's a transition that always makes my heart feel a little lighter, knowing the work is truly tucked in for the night. I'll set the lantern here on the heavy wooden table, right next to the book we finished, where its light can mingle with the soft glow of the candles in the window. You can see the orchard through the glass, those twisted silhouettes of the apple trees standing silent under the silver watch of the moon. They look so still now, as if they too are grateful to have shed their heavy burdens and finally be at rest. The kettle is still simmering on the crane, a low, rhythmic whistle that provides a steady anchor for the room's quiet. I've always loved this specific moment, the soft exit from the day's labours, where the only thing left to do is exist in the space we've prepared. We've moved the last of the harvest, labelled every jar, and bedded down the apples in their straw blankets. Now, the kitchen holds that deep domestic peace that only comes after a long day of honest effort. I find myself standing by the window for just a moment longer than necessary, watching the frost begin to lace the edges of the panes. It's a beautiful, cold world out there, but inside, the stone walls are thick and the fire is kind. I'll pull that stool closer to the fire for you, the one with the softest cushion. Can you feel the draft from the floorboards? I've moved the heavy rug over to catch it, so your feet stay warm while we settle in. There is no rush anymore, no urgent task calling from the cellar or the barn. We have reached the safe harbour of the evening, that predictable, comforting trigger for rest. The shadows of the hanging onions and dried herbs dance slowly against the ceiling beams, casting long, peaceful shapes that seem to move in time with the flickering flames. It's a paracosial kind of comfort, knowing we are here together, safe and dry, while the autumn night deepens outside. The fire is beginning to settle into those deep, glowing embers that give off the most persistent heat. I'll just add one small log, enough to keep the light low but the warmth steady, and then I'll join you. We've earned this quiet, haven't we? The ability to simply stop scanning for what comes next and give ourselves cognitive permission to be still. I find my own eyelids getting a bit heavy just watching the way the light catches the steam from your mug. The kitchen smells of cedarwood and the faint, lingering sweetness of the apples we sorted earlier. It's a complete scent, the smell of a finished year. I'll gradually lower my voice now, as the house itself seems to be breathing slower. The orchard trees are dark sentinels guarding our sleep, and the cellar below is a silent treasure chest of everything we need. You no longer need to listen to my stories, or worry about the rows of jars. The hearth is low, the moon is high, and the world is exactly as it should be. Take a deep breath of this warm, spiced air, and let the weight of the day stay on the floorboards where it fell. We've done the work of our folk, and now the rest belongs to us. The small light in the window will stay lit as our final blessing for the night, a signal to the stars that all is well in the farmhouse. Everything is gathered in. Everything is safe. I'll just sit here for a while, watching the embers fade into that soft velvet dark. Rest well, friend. The harvest is over, the year is put to bed, and the morning is a long, long way off. The hearth is low.